Hello, hello. My name is Alex Godfrey. I am currently serving as your regional director, and this video just serves to give you some information about the upcoming conference in Logan, Utah, RBC. If timeline allowed, I would have loved for us to all meet on Zoom and touch base about some conference logistics. Unfortunately, that is just not something on the table for us, so this video will have to do. And with that, we can really just hop on into it. There we go. Quick little overview of what this is going to cover. You'll notice a few videos here. These are taken from one of my philosophy classes, and they're touching on logical fallacies. I think they're just good things to keep in mind as we go into conference, knowing that we're going to be in boardroom voting on legislation and award bids and elections. So just good things to keep in mind. I do recommend you check out other logical fallacies and cognitive biases, but I didn't really want to overload this slide presentation with something that it's not really focused on. Outside of those, we're going to touch on some conference basics. We're going to have a little tour of the RBC website. We're going to go over the flow of business and some expectations. Think of some ways to have a little fun, even though this is a all business, no fun conference. And then I have the packing list and weather. Mind you, I'm recording this on the 10th, so I'm a few days out from conference still. So the weather will likely change between here and there. But it'll just give you a little heads up on what to start thinking about. And with that, this is our first video.
It's important to remember that logic is not about winning. Logic is about exploring and growing and seeing what's out there. But oftentimes we can try to turn this into a contest, and when we do, our reasoning tends to suffer. So one way this can happen is with proof by verbosity, where we think, oh, I have so much to say, I'm just going to overwhelm you with this point and this nuance and that nuance and this random fact. And, I can have all these random facts, and that can be not as good as just one solid point. So as in everywhere in life, it's important to focus on randomness. It's important to focus on quality rather than quantity, and you're going to do much better if you just look for solid points and if you don't waste words, right? Try to be more mindful with your speech and your communication and focus on what's relevant and reject the rest. So as always, I appreciate you all tuning in. It's important.
And some conference basics. If you didn't know, we're about to be at a conference. It'll be in Logan, Utah, so that's the northernmost portion of Utah. We'll be at Utah State University from the 16th to the 19th of February. On the 16th will be your arrival. This will either be in the afternoon or the evening. We'll have some light business, just to be mindful that most people would have been traveling all day. So it'll be pretty low key. Saturday and Sunday will be rather busy between elections and award bids and legislation. There's just a lot going on there. And then Monday, either early in the morning or more in the afternoon, you will return home. So RBC, as I mentioned, is a no-frills conference. This was a terminology that was used a lot before my time. We haven't seen it too much in recent years, but it's all business, no fun, which doesn't mean that we can't have fun. We'll go into ways to maybe spice it up a little bit here later on in the slides. Just don't expect all the bells and whistles we see at RLC. We won't have a keynote speaker. There won't be programs running through the evening. There's not going to be like educational sessions to attend. It will be mainly focused on business. It is a NACURA affiliated conference, and as I'm sure y'all know at this point, all NACURA affiliated conferences are dry. So this means you should not be drinking any alcohol, using any illicit substances over the course of the weekends. Be mindful of any federal or state laws, as well as the policies of Utah State and your home institution. No one wants to go home to an incident report. And RBC will not have a conference app. This is something NACUR is not necessarily moving away from, but at least moving adjacently away to. So just keep an eye on the conference web pages on the IACO websites and the Slack channels. They'll be just more important now that there's not a third party that we're sending you to. Speaking of the conference website, let's go take a look, shall we? This is the conference website. If you don't know how to access it, you can always go to, that is the Slack, you can always go to the IACO webpage, which is just iaco.nacur.org. You could also get there by going to nacur.org and scrolling down and clicking on the IACO logo. Once you're on the IACO homepage, you can access a whole bunch of things here if you're wanting to get to the governing documents or contact information for RBD members. We're not really interested in that here. We're interested in the business conference. So we're going to go to conferences, regional business conference, and that will bring you to this homepage. Now, there's a lot of fun things to dive into here, so we're just going to touch on them all. Registration has since closed, but it was linked here once. Award bids aren't currently linked here. It's only the 10th. The award bids aren't published yet. But once they do get published, you'll be able to access them from here, as well as in your email. You should receive a link to them. Similar with legislation, right now this just links you out to the legislation memo. But once legislation is published, I'm sure that'll link you to the legislation vault. Ordering buddies is something really fun that we'll touch on later. All you really need to know right now is that you can access the form from the conference webpage. Housing and Dining will send you some information about when certain meal periods will be and where they'll be at, as well as the information for the hotel. So if you're wanting to know what hours the gym are open or when breakfast is served, easier to look at that on the hotel webpage. They do have a pool, and I don't know about y'all, but I'm definitely bringing my swimsuit. Other information, we have some stuff regarding transportation. If your institution is driving or getting a rental car, important to know the hotel and campus parking situations, as well as what public transit is around in Logan. Back to the main webpage. The conference schedule we will dive into in a little bit, but good to know that it is here and accessible from this webpage. Spirit we'll touch on. If you do need a reminder down the road, you can find it from the conference webpage. The conference team I want to highlight, this is an amazing group of folks that have been working really hard to make sure that this weekend can happen. We've seen conferences in the past without conference teams. They're virtual, they're a little messier. So just make sure that you give these folks the appreciation they deserve for all the hard work they've put into this week. The boardroom websites, again, it doesn't link to anything right now because it's only the 10th. But as we get closer to conference, you can expect to see any presentations, any public minutes, things of that nature. You'll be able to link through from here. And then the annual conference website isn't linked quite yet, but you can always find it by going to conferences.nacur.org. This will be the website for all things annual conference come May. I do recommend you peek around this website just because it has a lot of really fun information and will be helpful as we get closer to that point. So that's the general overview of the conference website. Now, flow of business. Friday evening, as I mentioned, will be a little lighter, a little more low key of a day. Folks will have been traveling. It's not, no one's really hyped to get into business after a long day of travel. This is also to be mindful in case we see any travel delays due to weather. It'll be mainly checking in the opening ceremony and a peak panel type facilitated discussion. For those of you who have been to previous RBCs, you might know that peak programming typically operates very similar to general educational sessions that we see at other conferences or Nakur U at annual conference. We are going a different direction this time around. Peak program is typically facilitated by the COPRA. As you all know, that position is vacant. There's also just general time constraint concerns when it comes to scheduling the conference. Peak program is typically the first thing on the chopping block if we need more time available for awards. So this is just to be mindful and make sure that we're able to have something. This is new both to the RBD and to anyone who's been to conferencing in recent years. So grace all around with everyone trying to figure out what they want to be doing. It will operate as a facilitated discussion space. You can submit questions or topics you want to touch on, and we'll kind of just open it up to the room and share the knowledge of everyone within the region, which will be exciting. Saturday morning will be mainly presentations, and then the afternoon will really kick off business. We'll have elections, we'll have the budget for next year and some legislation. Sunday will be bids. In joint boardroom, we'll look at conference host site bids, and then in your splits, it's kind of the divide and conquer of the award bids. RHA presidents will look at RHA building block and advisor of the year. NCCs will look at student of the year and first year experience. And our NRHH friends will look at Helen Beck service and NRHH building block. We're going to dive into the schedule here and kind of just go piece by piece to make sure everyone's on the same page. But some notes. One, longer breaks are currently built into the schedule and like explicitly highlighted. This doesn't mean shorter breaks won't happen. Shorter breaks will happen. They'll happen quite often, and they'll be, as needed. At any point, you can motion for a move to groove, for a recess, and we'll see how we can build that into where we're at in the schedule. I am anticipating, bathroom breaks at the end of every major business section, so you can expect that. The schedule does build up as we go in intensity. So Friday night is very low key. Saturday morning, again, all presentation, and then some elections. And then Sunday is when we'll see award bids. And even there, the first chunk of award bid sessions is typically 1 or 2 bids per split, or 1 or 2 bids within a category. And then in the second session is where we see those more contested categories. This is just to make sure that everyone has a chance to get themselves familiar with how boardroom operates, with how PolyPro runs, and just see how it goes in person to make sure everyone's comfortable before we send you all off to do some of those more complex things. And we do need to keep in mind bidding down. So bidding down is a process that was here long before my time, likely long before your advisors' times. So I'll try to explain it the best I can. Say we have an individual who is bidding for regional director, associate director of NRHH, and coordinating officer of marketing and technology. So that individual will have submitted three positional bids, 1 for each. However, when we release bids, we only release the highest gavel order bid at a time. So of this individual, you will only see their director bid. And then come the director election, if they get it, no harm, no foul. Those other bids don't see the light of day, essentially. If they don't get director, we will then release their ADNRHH bid. And same deal, if they get ADNRHH, process stops there. If not, we then release their CO of marketing and technology bid. My understanding is that this is to make sure everyone has a fair shot, no matter what level they're bidding for. if you do see an individual, if we release them all at once, you can look and see like, wow, how committed is this person to director if they're bidding for all these other roles? Um, which doesn't really make sense. It's a person can be committed despite what other positions they're bidding for. So it's just to make sure we're not having any bias there. I will say that you won't have the full like bid eval process for those bid down bids. We just ask that you take some time and look them over. Typically, the only thing that will have changed between bids would be things like the goals and the timeline, their lineup of experience, or their letters of recommendation would be the same no matter what position they're looking at. So just a thing to keep in mind as we might see that over this weekend. With that, let's jump into the schedule. Do keep in mind that the schedule is subject to change. I make the schedule, and sadly, I cannot see the future. Um, I can try my best, but things don't always go according to plan. So how the schedule is made is we receive our award bid submissions, and from that we can look at policy and say, okay, so each award bid has, no more than roughly 30 minutes of discussion and no more than roughly 30 minutes of Q&A. And you can try and partial out how much time any given category would need. However, there's times where the clock stops. If we're in caucusing, if we're in a move to groove, time is not being counted during that point. Um, so that may lead to something taking longer than anticipated. In the reverse, say we have a bid which within 10 minutes we call the question and vote. Now it's the opposite. We have all this extra time that we planned for that we didn't use. So we will move things around as the day goes to fit things in where they make sense and to give you guys back as much time in the weekend as we can. So just do keep in mind, this isn't set in stone. It will move around as needed. This is uploaded into the website from a spreadsheet that the RBD works on, and it does take roughly 5 minutes to update. So if there is ever a change in the schedule, the RBD will make an announcement, we'll post something on the Slack, and eventually it will make its way to the website. It will just be a little more delayed. So with that, let's hop in. Check-in is scheduled right now from 3 to 7 in the afternoon on Friday. We've had a few institutions have reached out needing to check in earlier or later. So if that's you, don't worry. We have it on all books. But in general, check-in will happen from 3 to 7. This will be in the hotel if it's in the lobby or nearby the lobby. That's information I don't have at the moment. I'll find out on Wednesday. Um, you'll find it. It'll be hard to miss us, I assume. We'll talk about check-in in a later slide. But after that, we'll have a little bit of a break period. If you checked in at 7 on the dot and you need to run your stuff up to your room, this is the time for that. Do keep in mind that dinner on Friday is on your own, fend for yourself style. The conference team has sent out some good resources about what is available in Logan and what they recommend. If your institution is more the vibe of packing a jar of peanut butter on a loaf of bread, I'm right there with you. Just do know that you are responsible for your own dinner on Friday evening. Come 7:30 though, we're gonna kick it off. We're gonna transport to the USU campus and go into opening ceremony. This will be mainly logistics about the conference from the conference team. The RBD will have some introductions and we'll gavel on in. From there, we'll move into the peak panel discussion and go back to the hotel. Once at the hotel, I recommend you go to bed because it'll be a busy weekend. But the regional advisors and myself will be hanging around to answer any questions you have about the conference, about general either current occur things. If you have any lingering questions, thoughts, feelings, comments, concerns in regard to recall, we're more than welcome to answer those to the best of our ability there. So just know that the advisors and I will be hanging around to answer any questions that evening. do get some rest because bright and early we will go into breakfast and business. Breakfast is served at the hotel from 7 to 8. Do make sure that you are up and down with enough time to have breakfast or pack some zippy bags to bring some things into boardroom because we will be transferring to campus at 8:15. Once we get there, this morning will be mainly presentations just to kind of ease you into the early morning and into business. I know it's early. Trust me, my earliest class this semester is at 10 a.m. So I have not been awake at 7 a.m. in many months. So I'm right there with you. And we will get through it together, I promise. So we'll have some presentations, intro to boardroom, PolyPro, the infamous Nakura equity statements. I'll give a state of the region, which is kind of just a overview of how Attica has been faring over the past year, where we're going, some things to keep an eye out for. I'm going to have kind of a SWOT analysis style component to it. And then we'll go into the NICA executive presentation, which will give you just some updates from the national lens. And after that, we'll have a little break and move into the director election. This is a pretty contested category, it seems, so we'll likely be there a little while. I wouldn't be surprised if there's many rounds of voting, if there's many breaks to caucus. So just prepare yourself for that now. We are going pretty heavy into elections. But afterwards, we'll go to lunch, and all will be well. The merch table will be around if you're looking to buy any Iacur swag. And when we get back, we'll go into the ADAF election. Following the ADAP election, we'll have the AD and RHH election, a little break, and then move into split positional boardrooms for the CO of that most aligned split. So the NCCs will go and have a connected election. OHA presidents will go have a corporate election, and our NIHH friends will have the cosign election. After that is dinner time. And I didn't say this with lunch, but it is the same with lunch. These meal periods are steps away from the boardroom space. You are not hiking across Utah in the midst of winter. It is all nearby, I promise. And after dinner, we'll come back and have the comment election and have a little bit of a break before we move into the budget for the next fiscal year. So this would be the budget from this coming April through next February. I know my months. Um, it'll be a presentation from Danielle. There'll be some Q&A and you'll move to vote on it. After which, if time allows, we have some legislation, and then it's back to the hotel for bed. The next day, bright and early again for breakfast, and we're headed to the campus and hitting the ground running with some bids. The first thing we'll do will be in joint boardroom, will be selection for the RLC host site for next year. After that, we'll have a little bit of a break and move into split rooms again. As I mentioned, the breakdown of each positional bid, NCCs will have Student of the Year, and so on. This is strategically laid out so that you have some lighter, less contested bids for your first round, and then some more contested, more complex stuff in your second round. After this first round of bid sessions, there'll be a break, and we'll move to select the RBC host site for next year. Then there'll be lunch, and we'll go into that second round of bid sessions. There'll be a break. God willing, we'll get legislation, and it's back to the hotel to have a little bit of a transition period between bid selection and dinner and the banquets. Like with previous conferences, this will be a sit-down meal incorporated into the banquet ceremony. This Riverwood Conference Center is a conference center within or very close by the hotel. Merch will be available if you're looking for any Iacur swag. And after that, it's over. It's a very packed weekend. Whether you're leaving late Sunday night, early Monday morning, Monday afternoon, safe travels. Good to note that, sorry, my cat is getting into things. Good to note that breakfast will be served at the hotel from 6:30 to 9 if you're around during those periods and you want something to eat before you go. You do have to be checked out of the hotel by noon unless you set up a late checkout with the hotel. That is a overview of the schedule. Like I said, expect things to move around at least slightly as the weekend goes on. Um, in the cases where you're in split boardroom, if you finish before time is up, it is really at the discretion of that boardroom chair and just the vibe of the room what you want to do. If the consensus is that you want to have an early release and reclaim some of your time, that's perfectly okay. If instead you want to hang around with your fellow positional folks and have some positional time, a-okay too, because specific positional time is not baked into the schedule anywhere else.
What's up, everybody? Today's logical fallacy is hasty generalization, which is jumping to a general conclusion based on limited specific examples. So, Mark is a weird teacher, therefore, anybody who teaches logic must be weird. A German Shepherd bit me, therefore, all German Shepherds must be vicious. Or, my waiter was terrible, therefore, that whole restaurant is terrible. Anything like this, where we have a limited sample and we jump to a general conclusion. This is a really common fallacy, so do be on the lookout for it. And then also be on the lookout for my studio crashing and attacking us. So, as always, these videos are full of reminders to not think so much that we forget to just roll. So always remember to do that. Thanks for tuning in.
General expectations moving into conference. The conference team will have a whole bunch more for you come opening ceremony. This is just some things to keep in mind ahead of time. Food and drink all allowed in boardroom. We just ask that you pick up after yourself. Don't leave a mess for the conference team to pick up. They're doing enough work as is. Our boardrooms are modified closed. You might be familiar with the concept of closed boardrooms. This means they are super locked down, no one in, no one out for any reason. You know, you can't share any information outside of the boardroom. This is how Attica and a lot of other places have operated historically. I have heard horror stories of boardrooms going till like 2 in the morning. We don't operate like that anymore. It's not useful for anyone. So we do modified closed. Some things to note there that the contents remains in the space. That has not changed. So the live minutes that people are taking stays in the space. The topics and the things discussed, direct quotes, that stuff stays in boardroom. Um, Things will be announced as appropriate. So certain winners of categories and things of that nature will be announced, just not then and there while boardroom is happening. Do note that this includes tech communication. So don't be texting your RHA buddies back at home like, oh my God, so and so just said X, Y, and Z. Like we're not doing any of that. Stuff remains in the space. This is just to kind of honor everyone in there, respect the courage it takes to do bid defenses and present legislation. Just making sure that things kind of stayed locked down in that sense. So while the content and information remains in the room, that does not mean you have to remain in the room. Please come and go when needed. If you need to use the bathroom, we're all grown. You can just go and use it. If you need to step away for a moment, if your mom's calling you, whatever the reason, do feel free to step out and take the time that you need. We just ask that you maybe limit how much in and out you're doing and do it at times that is respectful for the people presenting, for the bid defenses going on or whatever it may be. We want to limit disturbances, but we don't want to lock you in boardroom, if that makes sense. So come and go, just be respectful about it and make sure that the material stays within boardroom. And the second point is to be kind and respectful. I have a little video here I saw on TikTok the other day that we'll listen to real quick.
So when I go to see a show, I employ something called the 5 block rule, where I don't say anything about the show, whether I liked it or not, unless I'm 5 blocks away from the theater. And I feel like more people should use that tactic because as we're leaving the theater, we can hear everything you're saying, which is like, you're totally entitled to it, but like, just when you think no one can hear you. Yes, we can.
So that's just a funny little video, but it does give us some good pointers to work from. As a reminder, we are all guests at Utah State. We're guests to the conference team's rooms. We are guests amongst each other. Um, so just be mindful. The conference team has put in a lot of work to hold this conference. And while you might have thoughts and feelings about how things are going down, it is best to just be mindful of what you're sharing in what spaces and who might be around to hear you. I'm sure we all have stories of hosting OHA or NOHH programs, and there's some student who has a lot to say about how it's being run, and it can not feel great. It doesn't feel great as the individual that that might be directed towards. It doesn't feel great as a outsider overhearing it, and it doesn't really feel great as the individual saying it. So just be mindful of what is being said. I'm not censoring you here. Of course, you are welcome to say whatever you please. Just do be mindful of the work everyone has put in to make this happen. With that, we aren't on Zoom. Back in the day, my early conference days, you could have your camera off, you could have your mic off, you could, you're just, no one was really observing you. And that's not entirely the case anymore. We're all in person, we can see each other's faces, we can hear each other's side conversations. So if an institution is making a point and you're sighing and rolling your eyes and just not, we can't control how we react. That is understandable. We can't control our emotions. Boardrooms, as we saw, will run very long. It'll be late in the evening. We'll all be tired. Just do try and be mindful of what you're presenting. You are a representative of your institution. So you don't want to give a bad impression of yourself, give a bad impression of your institution. We're all here, we're all trying to have fun. So do just be mindful of how you are physically appearing in the spaces. Um, Similar notes here, I have the principle of charity. Now, this is a practice to assume the best possible interpretation of a speaker's points. Um, so if a school is asking a question, if someone's answering a question, a school is sharing their discussion points, it might be late in the evening, they might be rambling over their point, they might missay something. Just assume the most charitable interpretation of what that institution is trying to say, because that is likely what they are trying to convey in that instance. Um, just helps keep a positive atmosphere. And this last point might be a little self-serving coming from me, but the RBDO students too. I remember my earlier conference days as a delegate or as an NCCIT. I remember looking up to the RBD and thinking that they were just super amazing and knew everything and had all the answers. And I can tell you right now, as the regional director, that is not the case. We might have a little more experience under our belts, but that does not mean we know everything. It does not mean we have all the answers. It does not mean we don't mess up too. Um, so while y'all might be getting a little antsy towards the end of boardroom and making mistakes in what you're wanting to say, assume that the same is true for the RBD. They might be stumbling over their words, they might misspeak. We're all students, we're all trying to grow, and we're all playing in the same sandbox. So just some things to keep in mind. Have grace towards yourself, have grace towards each other, have grace towards the RBD, towards the conference team, towards your adults, because they're still working their full-time job while we're in boardroom. Yeah, just try and keep it
So when I
nice and positive. As we've mentioned, this is generally a no-frills conference, but we could have a little frills, as a treat. There's a few ways we could do this. Clothespin trading is a big one. If you aren't aware of the practice, a lot of people will take those like wooden clothespins that you would use to hang up clothes on a line, and they'll paint them, they'll draw on them with markers, they'll glue on, little figurines and trinkets and trade those with other people, give them out to other people. They're really fun keepsakes to have at the end of conference. We have some spirit days. We have Friday will be school spirits, Saturday will be shaping the future, and Sunday will be just to impress yourself. I know what you're thinking, Alex. How do I dress shaping the future? Well, I'm glad you asked. Okay, it's a very open-ended prompt, and you can spin it a lot of ways. I do have a few ideas here if you need help getting the juices flowing. You could take the future and kind of like play in that realm of it. You could dress as one of the doctors from Doctor Who. You could dress as Doctor Strange. There's a whole bunch of characters in the Back to the Future franchise that you could dress as. You could dress as notable figures who helped shape our current present. So, past individuals who did shape the future. You could dress as your future career or what you're wanting to do once you graduate. Or you could dress as people who shaped your future. So, here I have like Bill Nye and Mr. Rogers and Miss Fizzle. So, there's a lot of ways you could take it. Um, if you're at a complete loss, it's always fine to just wear some more school spirit, wear some Iroquois swag. I personally am a big fan of Conference Waldos. Absolutely love them. Um, Boardroom Buddies, we saw on the conference website, we saw that form you could fill out. Boardroom Buddies are similar to like Secret Santa, might be a good comparison for it. So you fill out that form with your information, your likes, your dislikes, and you get matched with another individual, and you get their information. And you'll use that to make little fun gifts or pick-me-ups to share with them throughout the conference. General rule of thumb is to keep like cash value below $10. These can just be little snacks, little drawings, little notes, just to help, people, just help improve morale, really, of the boardroom. These are anonymous for most of conference. You don't know who your boardroom buddy is, and your boardroom buddy doesn't know who you are. And then typically some point within the last day, you let your boardroom buddy know who you are, you reveal your identity, and then you just have a nice friend that you've been making friends with throughout the course of the conference. Some other ideas, this conference is happening very close to Valentine's Day. I know that the RBD arrives in Utah on Valentine's Day, and y'all will be arriving shortly thereafter. So you could pick up those, I don't know what they're called, but like they're the boxes of Valentines that you would get in primary school and like share with your classmates. You can pick up some of those, you can make some yourself and share them with the other representatives. You can bring some school swag that you're willing to trade or gift in like a swap shop. Cheers are always awesome. Has my personal favorite cheer. It's the Utah. It's my favorite one. I would scream it, but it is 4 in the morning, so I'm not trying to get a noise complaint right now. And this last one's cheesy, but a smile. When we talk with folks, typically what we hear is that their favorite part of conference is the connections that they make. So don't be shy. I'm sure the individual sitting next to you is just as eager to make friends as you are. And there will be downtime in boardroom. There'll be the meal breaks. There'll be just breaks throughout conference that you can connect with individuals. I do encourage that you step outside your institutional bubble. You will see your fellow delegates the rest of the academic year. You'll see them going home on Monday. You'll see them next Monday at your OHA meeting. Whereas individuals from other institutions you might not see again until the annual conference in May, if you both happen to be going to the annual conference. So now's a really good time to make those connections and network with individuals that you might not otherwise see too often.
So if you want examples of any logical fallacy, you can always turn to politics. And that's especially true with today's, the ad hominem fallacy. So an ad hominem occurs when you attack the person rather than the argument. And of course, this is completely unfair because anybody can have a good argument or a bad argument, regardless of who they are. So it's important to look at the argument itself and not say, oh, well, you can't listen to that person because they're, insert name calling here. It's it's a completely unfair way to argue. So we want to be kind whenever possible. We want to be respectful whenever possible. And when we're talking about arguments, we should focus on the arguments, of course, and not on the person. It's just, yes, that's about all I have to say about that one. So focus on the argument. Do the premises entail the conclusion or not? Are there other logical fallacies present? But focus less on who's saying it.
This slide just outlines the general check-in process. Sometimes it might be your NCC doing the check-in, so this is good information to share with them. Check-in, as I mentioned, will be in the hotel lobby or nearby the hotel lobby. I'll let you know when I know. The general flow of it is you'll talk to different individuals. You'll essentially move down a line and check all your boxes and then go on to actually check into your hotel. So to start with, we're going to check that your institution is actually affiliated with NACURA. If it's not, we'll have a promissory note for you to fill out. And if it is, at this point, we would give you your placards. Next, we would check if your institution had paid for RBC. If your institution had not paid beforehand, you would either pay there or sign a promissory note. Typically, at this point, your institution or your advisor will have communicated with the conference advisor. So we do know, we know what to expect here. We know, given your institution, if you're going to need a promissory note, or if you are planning to pay then and there, or if you have already paid. It's just a check. Next, we're going to go and see if you have completed and all the members of your delegation have completed conference waivers. If not, you'll do them there and then. They're super quick. It's like 3 signatures. After that, we're going to check the award bid evaluations. This is that spreadsheet, that Google Sheet you're going to get of all the different award categories where you'll fill in questions you had or pre-typed discussion points. We're going to check if your institution had filled them out to like a satisfactory level. The award bid evaluation sheet itself outlines what that means and kind of gives examples. Really, we're just trying to check that you have actually looked at the bids prior to voting on them. So we're just going to make sure that you have a few sentences of a discussion point, that you have a few questions that you're ready to ask. If this is not completed, it's not the end of the world, I promise. It's just the case that your institution won't have voting or speaking rights until it is filled out. So you really have until that director election, Saturday afternoon, early morning, late morning, early afternoon, to get it completed. We will be checking Saturday morning during that presentation period, just to see if you hadn't filled it out, if you had at that point. Much easier to have it filled out beforehand, but just do know that not the end of the world if something is missing, if you forgot a box, anything like that. After that, you are all checked in on the IACUR side of things. You'll then be passed off to the conference team. They'll have your name tags, your room keys, all that fun stuff, and you can go on to actually getting checked into your hotel room. Packing list, of course, I don't know everything that you need all the time. I personally forget things all the time, so maybe take this list with a grain of salt. But these are some helpful reminders. Traveling, anytime you're traveling, you're going to want to have your current and valid IDs, be it a driver's license, a state ID, a passport, whatever you have. Also, any insurance cards that you might need. Close, the conference is 4 days and 3 nights, so that's Friday arrival, Saturday and Sunday, and then a Monday departure. Pack warm, bring layers. This next slide here will be the weather, so we'll get into that in a moment. Toiletries, we are at a hotel, so there will be things like shampoo and conditioner. Of course, always feel free to bring your own. But toothbrush, toothpaste, mouthwash, bath wash, shampoo, conditioner, lotion, chapstick, any hair products you use, any medications you take. Some fun things, if you have any small games or fidget items that you'd like to have in boardroom or during any downtime, your pin lanyards, any trading pins, be them clothespins, button pins, some school swag items, boardroom buddy items, if you have a boardroom buddy, snacks for boardroom, other miscellaneous things. Please bring a water bottle, any technology and chargers that they need, any schoolwork you have. We're all students. I'm sure you have things due on Monday. And then any personal spending money for snacks at the hotel, coffee, dinner on your own Friday, merchandise, stuff of that nature. Here we have the weather. Mind you, I'm taking this from it's early morning on the 10th, so the weather might change between here and there. Right now, it is looking like it's going to be pretty chilly. It'll be in the 40s in the day, 30s in the evening. We might get snow, we might get rain. Who's to say? As I said, you're not going to be trekking it around the Utah State campus, but do bring a jacket, bring a hat. It's good to have layers just in case.
The perfectionist fallacy is limited to either its perfection or why bother. If I can't completely eradicate all of the world's problems, why devote myself to any cause? If I don't love either candidate, why vote? If I can't get 100% in that class, why try or why even take it? There's so many examples of this. And of course, because perfection is impossible, the perfectionist fallacy tends to lead to us doing nothing at all. But even an imperfect piece can be enough to get the job done. So it's really important that we try to overcome this way of thinking. There's today's reminder that even when you think you have a perfect plan, the world may not play by logical rules. So keep that in mind at all times, that the best that we do with logic and the best moves and the best plans may not always work out. But still, it's important to try to avoid this perfectionist fallacy as we go through life, because otherwise we'll find ourselves defaulting to inaction or striving for the impossible, neither of which is all that helpful. So as always, thanks for tuning in.
That's all I have for you. I'm sure you have a lot of questions. I'm sure I've skipped over some things accidentally. You are always free to contact me. You can message me on Slack. It just might take me a little longer to respond to DMs. And email me would be the best at ia_director@ncur.org. Yeah, any questions, feel free to post them here in the Slack, message me privately. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you all at conference, seeing all the hard work you've put into your bids come to fruition. And yeah, bye folks.